everyone. We will be recording this webinar, and that recording will be available after it's ended. It'll be available on the website, and you'll also be getting an email with the recording. And before we get started, just take a moment to look around the webinar platform and orient yourself in the options near the top. You'll see your audio settings, the Q&A and chat functions, which we will be using throughout the webinar. And during the webinar, if you have any technical questions, please use the chat function. Lisa Fernandez, Food Solutions New England's Communication Director, will assist you. And if you have any questions that you'd like the presenters to discuss live or questions about the challenge, please use the Q&A function, and we will do our best to make sure that they get answered during the Q&A periods that we have. So I think we're just about to get started. Welcome. So hello everyone, my name is Kalila and welcome to this webinar, Beyond Words to Equity and to Action and Resiliency, which will introduce the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge hosted by Food Solutions New England. We're kicking off the 6th annual challenge with this webinar. In 2013, Food Solutions New England adapted the 21-day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge created by Debby Irving and Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. to a food systems lens, and we've been thrilled and encouraged by the engagement that we've seen over the past few years. Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking the time for this even before the challenge formally begins. We really appreciate your participation, particularly in this time of uncertainty and disruption, and we hope that you're staying healthy and safe. Before we jump into the webinar, we wanted to acknowledge the challenges and upheavals that all of you have been experiencing due to COVID-19. There are a few resources that we wanted to share with you. One will be linked in the chat, including this statement from Race Forward, which seemed particularly apt in these times. So while we know that anyone can contract the virus, we also know that the impacts on communities of color could be severe. People of color are disproportionately likely to be in low-paying or hourly wage jobs that make them unable to provide care or interrupt work. They are also more likely to have limited access to affordable healthcare, childcare, and transportation. People of color are more likely to face unsafe conditions inside prisons, jails, and detention centers. Funding disparities in communities of color have led to hospital closures, shortages of frontline doctors and nurses, higher incidence of chronic conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease, housing overcrowding, and lack of quality elder care. These effects of structural racism have always been present and can have significant ramifications as we navigate through this public health crisis. So now more than ever is the time to engage in racial justice and equity work. And so while we acknowledge that it may be difficult to engage in the challenges planned, particularly if you're working from home, like many of us, here I am on my couch, we hope that you'll find ways to connect, reflect, and act in whatever ways make sense for you. And as always, all of the resources will be available beyond the 21 days, and we really encourage you to take this beyond this 21 days and into the 365 days of the year and really live the challenge. So, on that note, I know we've already done a little bit of this in the chat, but to get a deeper understanding of who is in the virtual room, let's reflect and use the chat to share. So what is your name? Where are you joining us from today? And if you are participating in the challenge in a group, what group are you affiliated with? Also, if you could share how you found out about the challenge, that would be great. And I will, we'll have a couple of minutes for this, and I'll just share some highlights that we can get to know each other. We've got some Minneapolis, hello Marjorie, someone from Seattle, Amherst, Massachusetts. Oh wow, a lot of things coming. This is fantastic. And it looks like we've got people from all over the United States, Arizona, hello. Hi Penny in Wisconsin. New England, local to me, I'm in Boston, hello. Boston, Massachusetts, Keene, New Hampshire, Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's so exciting to see all these people participating in groups or on their own. This mix is super important. And also, you know, we'll be kind of talking a bit more about group participation, but, you know, however you are participating is fantastic, as well as some kind of creative ways to participate in groups, since most people won't be gathering in person for the challenge. Great. So you can continue to put put your introductions in the chat and scroll through and read where others are from. And we're gonna do a little bit of an introduction of ourselves and who the hosts from around the region. So first, we'll do an introduction of our hosts and then an introduction of Food Solutions New England, and we'll review the goals for the hour. So Karen, you're up first.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm joining you from Durham, New Hampshire today. I'm the principal of CAS Consulting based in Boston, Massachusetts, and I provide mission-based consulting focusing on advocacy, resource matching, board development, strategic planning, all of that in the service of a racially equitable community, state, nation. And I do that, again, across all those venues. I've been part of FSNE's network for more than 8 years. I'm serving currently on the steering committee and have been involved in FSNE's work around the vision and racial equity for the whole time that we've been engaged in that way. And also a part of the design team for the challenge. I'd like to lift up, I'm very excited about for Massachusetts to be an ambassador for FSNE's New England Food Vision, where I have an opportunity to look at the work that we're doing in equity, and racial equity in particular, with students and residents and organizations and communities of color, and really connecting those evolving food system work that's going on across New England. And I also am the Thomas Haas Professor in Sustainable Food Systems in Durham, New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire. And happy to be here.
Thanks, Karen. Curtis.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Kalila, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from, joining us from. My name is Curtis Ogden. I'm joining you from my home in Amherst, Massachusetts today. I'm a senior associate with the Interaction Institute for Social Change, and we like to say at IISC that we're not just me's, we're we's. And so here representing my colleagues, Kelly Bates, Miriam Messinger, Cynthia Silva Parker, Abba Taylor, and many others, out there working for racial equity, social justice, and other networks and communities. Delighted to be an ISC representative here on this webinar. I'm also the network facilitator of Food Solutions New England and have been for the past years, and as Karen said, serve as a co-chair of the challenge, of this particular challenge since it began in 2015. Great to be here.
Thanks, Curtis. Joanne.
Hi, I'm also with the University of New Hampshire, but working remotely from my home. As a university instructor, it feels totally different not to be able to see my students. We did our first online, for me, course. All the students are learning remotely for the remainder of the semester. So it feels good to have a way of connecting. As we use this platform, we can connect in different ways. So we might be socially not as in touch, but we're connected in new and in important ways. So I am a university instructor at UNH. I'm director of their dietetic internships. So dietitians, professionals who want to be dietitians would go through our program and take that national exam. I'm also a senior faculty fellow with the Sustainability Institute, and that has been the backbone for Food Solutions New England, so feel very lucky to be a part of that team. I've been a part of the challenge since its inception. I feel like I learn so much every time I'm engaging with it, and together that we learn together. And it was just so delighted you were able to join us today and be on this journey together.
Thanks, Joanne. And once again, I'm Kalila Booker-Casano. I'm calling in from Brookline, Massachusetts, in my apartment. I work at the Henry P. Kendall Foundation in Boston. We're a family foundation committed to creating a resilient and healthy food system in New England by increasing the production and consumption of local, sustainably produced food. I'm on the Food Solutions New England network team and have been involved with FSNE's work for a little under 4 years. And I am thrilled to be involved with the Racial Equity Challenge once again, and I cannot wait to participate alongside you and thousands of others. So we're also really lucky to be joined this afternoon by 3 special guests. We have Debby Irving, Julius Kolawole, and Anna Muhammad, who, along with Joanne, will join us in a discussion about the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge, as well as ways to bring the themes of the challenge into our lives and work outside of these 21 days. We are so grateful that you're all here, and let's get started. So to give us a bit of background, Karen will be sharing an introduction to food solutions in England. Karen, I think you're muted.
You muted me. Unmute me. Okay. So Food Solutions New England, I love the visual there, so I'm going to talk a little bit through that. But Food Solutions New England is a regional collaborative network of individuals and organizations working across sectors. So we work across processing, distribution, policy, government, health, nutrition, everything that touches our food system. Food access, soil health, science, farmers, and fishermen. And yes, eaters, we're all eaters of this food system. It was organized to support the emergence of sustainability of our New England food system that is a driver of healthy food for all, racial equity and food justice, and sustainable farming and fishing, and healthy and thriving communities. The network was launched in 2010 in the spirit of the responsive shared sense that we're greater and more powerful, connected, and where there's trust and deep collaboration and innovation. We all are needing that across our food system to really make it a regional system that serves and feeds us all. University of New Hampshire Sustainability Institute initiated the planning of this process, so we call them our backbone. And to anchor us, thinking about how we're going to do this together, a New England food vision was written and calls for a vision, a food system that works for all with dignity. It has a vision of sustainable farming and fishing, and healthy food for all that I mentioned before. But where we're looking at 50% of our food is harvested, grown, processed, and entrepreneured in our region by 2060. It was always considered aspirational because it requires and invites us all from our diverse ethnic and economic backgrounds and expertise and lived experience to contribute to the pathway. And that's what you see there, the pathway going, and to make it become a reality for all of us, not some of us. So we've dedicated this charge and this change for transformation with core values: democratic empowerment, racial equity and dignity for all, and sustainability and trust. And so when we're thinking about where we are right now, trust is so key to any transformation that we're trying to achieve. So looking at the image there, you have the democratic empowerment, and through the mobilization of that of people and organizations, networks aligned with that vision as we aim to bring about increased civic engagement and action, and people knowing and being able to see themselves in that change. A new food story, you move up a little bit further and you see that as a new narrative where the sharing of truth and information and stories and shifting awareness, understanding and behavior and countering the dominant messaging. And then when you go up a little further, you see a sign there that's for sustainable economy. And it's vibrant ecologically and equitably, the economy that integrates enterprise and visibility, community, all of the things that make us whole and make us connected. And that translates to an economy of prosperity that is measured by livable wages, meaningful livelihoods, and strong community. So as you see that, it's not linear. You can go across the lawn and hit another place. So it's all intersectional when we're looking at our vision of what our food system can and should be. And so today we're looking at our work as FSNE to continue to curate ideas and strategies, making new collaborations, and crafting and sharing resources that takes us into more action, further in action together.
Great, thank you, Karen. And so before we jump into more content, I think we should just go over the goals of our hour together. So our goals are, first, to understand the need for sustained work to advance racial equity individually in our communities and in the organizations and networks that we work within. While your day-to-day reflections during the challenge may be more personal in nature, the tools and skills that you'll be drawing upon can be applied in your home, communities, and workplaces. Second, to clarify how the challenge works and review the platform that you'll be using to access it every day, whether you're participating individually or in a group. And third, to celebrate our commitment to embarking on a 3-week challenge. So it's no small thing to dedicate time each day to learning and taking action. And so we should celebrate that. We're also going to review our agenda. So first we'll dig into a little bit of the history around the creation of the Racial Equity Challenge. Then we'll walk through the logistics of how it works. We'll get to hear some perspectives from the field, after which there will be a short Q&A for questions specifically for our panelists. Next, we'll hear from each other to get a sense of why this is important to us, who's in the room, a bit more than the kind of brief introductions that we had at the beginning. We'll give a brief overview of how to prepare for the challenge so that you can get the most out of these 21 days. And finally, we'll close with a question and answer session for more general questions about the challenge and any logistical questions that you might have, as well as a quick evaluation of this webinar itself. So before we jump into the specifics of the challenge, Joanne is going to share a bit more about the history of the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge, which was adapted by Food Solutions New England. Joanne.
Sure, thank you. So, you know, we all, as we've said, we all have a need for food, but not everyone really has equitable access to healthy food. And we had started in 2010, 2011 to come together as a New England region. But when we started, we were lacking a lot of diversity. By 2013, we took a hard look at ourselves and said, this is not appropriate. We need to build diversity, skill, and will. And that though theoretically we really felt a commitment to addressing race and equity, many of us did not feel we had the skills, the knowledge, the ability to delve and discuss in the kind of thoughtful way that we would want to in our personal and professional ways. And by 2014, what we said was, let's all learn together. Let's lean in, build trust, and really explore issues of race and equity, how they're impacting our own work and those of our colleagues, friends, and communities. So in 2014, we launched the first Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge. We really thank Dr. Eddie Moore, Dr. Margaret Pennick Parks, and Deb Irving for allowing us to borrow their framework and put a food system lens on it. So we're really very well aware that our food system is built upon pervasive and persistent inequalities. But that said, gives us an opportunity for really transformational work using the food system as a framework. It offers us multiple ways to address inequities. And what we want to do is just take a moment to think about the difference between equality and equity. With equality, it's implying sameness, and that that only works if everyone's starting out on the same spot, and you with equality give them all a bump, then that's fine. But what we're really looking at is equity. Equity acknowledges fairness, that everyone isn't starting at the same place, that there's major wealth disparities, educational access disparities. And so when you embrace an equity lens, you're embracing how do we make this food system more fair. This challenges us to look at structural food system transformation, and that the kind of change we're seeking, both short term in this COVID crisis to stop unfair and inhumane SNAP cuts or eligibility changes, but also long term that says, how do we build a food system that provides dignity with wages so that not as many people need public forms of assistance. So we know that this opportunity for structural change provides us with real-time opportunities for dismantling current structures and building and removing some of the barriers, the many barriers that lead to marginalized situations for many of our citizens. We embrace that this work is not easy, but then again, the possibilities are so inviting for real-time work and effort. So how do we take on this? And so the 21 days gives us that chance to say, hey, we can lean in, really think about this, we might not be able to change, we won't be able to change everything in 21 days, but we're going to be able to see things with a new lens. So what we're hoping to do, forging forward together, working together, develop awareness and really challenge, recognize the challenges that are ahead, that are now and ahead, build those skills, affirm our collective will, and build those allies that we have from so many different directions: public health, nutrition, policy. Together, some of those perceived racial differences and real racial differences can really be broken down as we lean in together and really build a system that has full participation and can nourish everyone. So it may seem lofty, but really so much of this is policy. Poverty is not a construct we can't undo. And so we thoughtfully embrace this time together and look at ways that we really can build these allies to have the food system reach its full potential as an agent of transformational change.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. So tell us a little bit more about yourselves. We've got a poll that should have popped up on everyone's screens. So we're just going to take a pause and get a sense of who is in the room. So the first question is, where are you located? Where is your work based? Your primary area of work, study, or volunteerism in the food system? How many times have you participated in the challenge? And are you participating in a group? If so, how many people are you participating with? And I believe we'll have the results of this poll will stay up on the screen, so you'll be able to kind of see, because I know I would be curious to see who's in the room if I was participating in the poll. So just take a couple minutes to do that. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and close the poll, so we should be able to see the results. Great, so we've got about 75% of us are from the US, but not New England, and then some New England representation, so hello. And so you should be able to see these up here. We've got 43% of folks are in agriculture, farming, or gardening, 43% education, students or teachers, then nutrition and health. And we have about 80% of you, this is your first time participating in the challenge, so welcome. We are so excited to have you. And those repeat participants, welcome as well. We're really excited that you're back. We think that you'll find these second or third 21 days just as fulfilling as the first or second time that you did the challenge. And about 41% of you are doing it on your own, and then 44% are doing it as a part of a group. So we hope that you'll still be able to participate in a group however you can find a way electronically, but it's so great to see so many people doing group participation. So thank you so much for that. Next, we're going to turn it over to Curtis, who is going to be giving us a bit more information about how the challenge works day to day. Curtis.
Thanks, Kalila, and thanks for, again, everybody for joining. Amazed at the numbers and amazed at the swath that we have from around the country and the number of people who are signed up for the 4th or 3rd time. It's in part for you all that we keep this challenge constantly evolving as the work itself evolves and our own understanding of what's at stake and what it takes to do this work changes. So some of this will be for review for those who've seen it before, but some of this is new, or what we're adding to the challenge this year. So it all starts by you signing up. So for those of you who've registered formally for the webinar, you will get a link afterwards where you can register. You can also go directly to the Food Solutions New England website and register there. A new feature in this year's challenge is that we're inviting organizations to sign up. So you can let us know that your whole organization or team is going to be signed up and participating. Last we heard, I'm sure there's a more updated number, we were approaching 500 some organizations, maybe more, that have formally said we all are going to participate in this, which is incredible. Once you've signed up, you're going to get an email with some options for pre-work, and that will include readings and videos, some baseline kind of understanding and familiarity with terms. So that will come before the challenge actually starts on March 30th. Once March 30th rolls around and then going through April 19th, when you're registered, you will get a daily email in your inbox with a prompt. And that prompt will be structured in a new way this year. For those of you who've done this before, we have a format that will invite you to learn, to reflect, to act, and to go deeper. So this is by popular request, wanting to break it down a little bit and also direct people's attention more towards actions that they can take. So there will be links, as there have been in the past, in each one of those prompt emails to short videos, articles. We're trying to bring more podcasts, varying the kind of media, understanding that we are busy and that these times may have us disoriented dealing with children and loved ones. So just wanting to make it easily accessible and bite-sized, and always the opportunity to go deeper. Within those prompts is also an opportunity to get into the discussion platform, where you'll find a link that's for you to participate in an online discussion platform if you'd like. So again, these prompts are daily. There's going to be time for more reflection on the weekends. That's something we built in, Karen, last year, the year before, by a popular request, that there's a lot coming at people and weekends are a good time to catch up and to go deeper. And so the weekends will be an opportunity to do that, to look back on the week, to catch up and to go deeper in the things that interest you. And so again, the emphasis here is not just thinking about each prompt and then quickly moving on, but wanting to encourage people to reflect, to act, to share, to be in conversation with one another. As Eddie, Marguerite, and Debbie originally created this tracking tool that we've now riffed on, you can use that either as a static tool, something you can print out to record for yourself, or again, there's an opportunity for you to do this in an interactive way on the online platform. There's also a resource list with links to additional videos, blogs, articles, and books to check out. And we always encourage people during the challenge to lift up resources we haven't lifted up. So much is being added daily, again, in terms of videos, podcasts, articles, blogs, links. So please feel free to share those with us. And we're inviting people to share this with your people, not just to get people registered. We're going to be using social media to get out questions, reflections, links. You can use the hashtag FSNEEquityChallenge on social media to spread the word, learnings, questions, insights, possible actions to take, encouraging people to organize. And we're also leading a discussion during, well, actually, we'll say a little bit more about that later. We have created a discussion guide that will support you, which we had created last year. Again, that is available for people who want to sign up to be facilitators of a group, of their organization. with tips and tricks there, including some things that we'll add given that we're all living in more of a virtual realm. So again, this starts March 30th, it ends April 19th. All the resources and information are available on the FSNE website, even after the challenge is over. Any questions that come up, you can go contact us via this contact us link on the FSNE website or via email at fsne.info@unh.edu. And you can also use the Q&A function on the screen during this webinar if you have a particular question. And we'll have time to get to some of those questions just before we wrap up this webinar. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Kalila.
Thanks, Curtis. Thanks. So now that we're kind of a little bit more like steeped in the day-to-day logistics, it's important to hear from people who have demonstrated foundational leadership in this work. And today we'll be having a conversation with 4 partners who have centered racial equity in their work. They'll be sharing their thoughts on the importance of this challenge and the importance of a commitment to racial equity during these 21 days and beyond. After the conversation, there will be time for Q&A just for this panelist portion. So if you have any questions that come up over the next few minutes, please use the Q&A function. And in the spirit of keeping things kind of fresh and new, you know, in the past, during this webinar, we've done short presentations, but we're doing more of a discussion format to kind of echo how many of you are participating in the challenge in groups and discussing. So we wanted to discuss as well. So I'll just give a brief introduction to our speakers and then we'll jump right into it. So joining us today, we have Debby Irving, who is one of the creators of the 21-Day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge, which was adapted by FSNE, a racial justice educator and author of Waking Up White. We have Julius Kolawole, the president of the African Alliance of Rhode Island and a steering committee member for FSNE, as well as the Rhode Island ambassador. We have Anna Mohammed, Equity Director and Food and Access Webinar Coordinator for NOFA, Massachusetts, and FSNE Network Team member, and Joanne Burke, who you've already met. So let's jump right into our discussion. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for engaging in this conversation with us and doing things a bit differently this year. So let's just jump right in. So if you could each briefly introduce yourselves and share a bit about how you engage in this work. Debby, or Anna, let's start with you, sorry.
Sure. Good afternoon, good morning, grand rising to everyone. It is so wonderful. I see the number of participants jumping up and it's really inspiring to see so many people wanting to participate in this. This is probably my 4th year working with the Equity Challenge. I come through it by way of my work in the food system. I work with the Northeast Organic Farming Association, known in the state of Massachusetts as NOFA Mass. I am based in Springfield, Massachusetts, Western Mass. Big shout out to all of our Western Massachusetts participants, but I work throughout the state. And the 21-Day Challenge, my introduction to it is through NOFA. NOFA was kind of experiencing something that Food Solution New England in their early days experienced, understanding that the food system is diverse. And in order to make it more equitable, it had to be seen within the organization itself. And so over the past few years, we as an organization have used the challenge to help us really drive a very ambitious program of working within different communities of color, but doing it with understanding, with love and deep respect, understanding that there's a level of self-determination that all communities must have, particularly communities of color. And so the challenge has helped us to assist that. It has assisted me in being able to better understand how I'm relating, not only in just in Black and Brown communities, but all communities as we work. You know, we're farmers, we're gardeners, using organic farming and gardening techniques, really understanding the root of it, understanding that this belongs to all people, not just one group, and being able to tell that message and that story of all people throughout the communities we work in. So it's been a wonderful journey working with the challenge, and now we get a chance to take it and work within NOFA to do it as a group. And I will tell you, to those who are working as a group, it is very helpful. We have seen our growth jump and exponentially using the challenge, and we're looking forward to do a deep dive and spread this out to all of our programming. So that's all that I have right now. Thank you so much, Khalil.
Thanks. Debbie.
Well, I come to the challenge. It started with a phone call one day. When did you say you first used it? Maybe in 2014? I guess that's when I got the phone call from my good friend and colleague, Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., who said, I think we need to create something. I've been telling people, this is him talking, I've been telling people, you got to do something every day. That's too much for some people to absorb. So how about we do 21 days? And I think he had just heard or had just come into realization that 21 days might be a significant amount of time because that's supposedly what it takes to develop a new habit. And so we started talking about it as a habit challenge, a challenge to create new habits, which makes a lot of sense because the status quo in the United States habitualizes us around what we're already doing, the ways we're already thinking about a problem, the ways we're already engaging with one another, the ways we're already possibly spending our days just trying to get through a to-do list without inserting new intention and new ideas. And so this was a way to say, hey, if we really focus on one thing, anything for 21 days, we can change the way we think about a problem, the way we understand a problem. It also, as we started to develop what we realized, wow, people are going to come out of this with new connections. They're going to meet some new authors. They're going to see some new YouTube video people. They're going to go out in the world and notice new things, and all of that will become embedded in a daily practice. So that was a big part of it. And I think as I watched it unfold, in the way many organizations, we did a Google search recently on the 21-day racial equity habit challenge, and we got over 11 million hits. So it doesn't mean 11 million organizations are doing it. It means that
There we go.
It's more powerful than sitting down and saying, okay, for the next 21 days, read these 2 giant books or watch this one documentary, you know, giving someone a lot of content, but coming from a single perspective. What I really love about the 21-day plan is that you're getting multiple people's perspectives, multiple organizations' perspectives. So a lot of collective wisdom. And collective wisdom is such an important part of racial equity movement, because it gets us away from that one source, that one person who had the privilege to publish, or the privilege to get a voice, or get a privilege to get a PhD and somehow become more believable. So I like the way the 21-day plan sort of flattens the hierarchy, disseminates a lot of information, and then I loved watching you all adapt it, and I'm continuing to watch other organizations make it sector specific or ism specific, which it's just incredible. Mm-hmm. But thank you for using it, and thank you for having me here today. I'm talking to you from Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was supposed to be talking to you from Lake Charles, Louisiana, but of course my schedule has been completely canceled for the next 2 months.
Thanks, Debbie. And Julius, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself next, and also kind of kick us off into the first question, which is what's the importance of centering racial equity in the food system? So Julius.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Kind of excited looking at the number of participants. This is interesting. I find it very fascinating. So I will talk a little bit about what I call it the practice of racial equity practices. I'm part of the African Alliance of Rhode Island. We've been in business since 2004. We grow quite a lot of vegetables. We make products out of it, and we've had our own share of racial equity experiences. What FSNE has done for us is help in a way that you take the subject and you make it digestible You make it into small bites so everybody can understand. And you can showcase practices, how you can speak to it, and how you can educate people about it, how you make other people see what the issues are. So from many points of many entries to this particular topic or this subject, it has been very, very useful in what we do here in Providence, Rhode Island. And I do question many of the topics, many of the subjects, many of the words used, which I think is part of the education. And I will mention one or two. We work with a lot of the refugees. Because of what we do, we're able to engage all our communities using some of what we learned from racial equity practices. We make sure that the refugees are able to engage the people in the community, especially in the market. There have been cases where there are disagreements or misunderstanding, and we'll be able to use, again, some of what we've learned from racial equity practices to engage. Sorry about that. That's not from me. So there have been cases where we have called the community into a workshop on racial equity and bring in a group of panelists to talk about this, because most of what we do in the so-called food desert communities. So because of the tagline of food desert, which I question every time, I don't know how we got there. Again, the racial equity piece has become a practice. It allows us to engage, it allows us to talk to people about it, it allows us to educate people. And I'm gonna stop there. I hope you have questions for me. I can say a lot more, but I want to leave room for questions and answers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Julius. And as I'm looking at the time and my own notes, I'm realizing that I was like a lot more ambitious about how many questions I thought we could all get through, but this is fantastic. Why don't we jump next? I know that a lot of people are participating in organizations. So maybe first we'll jump to Joanne. As someone who has engaged with the challenge in the university setting, what have your experiences been with that? And then also, if we have any tips in light of school and university closures and businesses implementing work from home, are there tips for groups who are still looking to participate in the challenge while practicing some responsible physical distancing?
Sure, thank you. So as I said, I'm with the University of New Hampshire in the Department of Ag, Nutrition, and Food Systems. So a new department that really tries to make these links. And I think there really are so many ways to engage students. For instance, even if you didn't have it in your course, but you have been thrown into, now you're doing online, the materials are there. So although I already had it in my course, students can take this if you're looking for thoughtful online participation, whether you do it as bonus points or whatever, they can elect to be part of the challenge. And as part of it, the way I've done it in my course is it's been part of an optional, thoughtful kind of process. And if you're using Blackboard or Canvas or one of those electronic mediums, putting in a place where they can just submit their thoughts, their reflections that are going to you as the instructor. They can, there's really not a right or a wrong answer. I just tell them it has to be thoughtful. I think what it does is, as Debbie was mentioning, there's so much rich information from different perspectives that it allows our students to engage with thinking about things they may not have thought about before. For many of the students in New Hampshire, where I am, we are a 94% white state, and the university has a bit more diversity, but it's really allowed them to, in really authentic ways, explore how they may have had an advantage that they never thought about before. I think it allows people to enter into a space where they may not be comfortable, and it's okay not to be comfortable as you try to navigate, how do I thoughtfully address race and inequity. Many of our students as dietitian in training, you know, they're trying to be health professionals that care, but they also are, you know, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to look like I'm a racist. And it really is important for them to work together and say, how do we thoughtfully build the trust to really structurally begin to dismantle and to gain the skill and will, and that this is a together process. It's not us white people solving somebody else's problem. It's together, working together with, not for. And I think, I have to say, I have just been moved by some of the student reflections as they leaned in, looked at some of the issues and said, man, I never thought about X, Y, Z. So I think I've also, besides the students, so for me, because I've been part of the challenge, some of my students in the fall get to critically review materials that might make it into the challenge reading materials. For others, it's been my the professional groups that I work with, such as Dietetic Association or Society for Nutrition Ed and Behavior, reaching out and saying, how do we as food and nutrition professionals address issues of race and inequity along so many different lines. So I know we're short on time, but I think there's so many different ways to, as Debbie said, help people thoughtfully disrupt the status quo that is so detrimental to really our food futures. And how do we lean in and say, let's write a really good food future that's far more equitable.
Thank you, Joanne. And I think we're just gonna really quickly, time for one last question. You know, when we were talking about the structure of the prompts, it's learn, reflect, and act. And so one of the major themes this year is moving beyond learning and reflecting to action. So how have any of you navigated the shift towards action in your own work, and what tips do you have for others? So maybe, you know, whichever of you wants to take this, maybe Debbie or Julius.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you, Julius. I think the way it has translated to action, so what I feel that my role in this vast movement is to be somebody who finds ways, you know, my own perspective is one of someone who lived with so much class and racial privilege that I never had to know any of this. Just like Joanne is saying, I would have been one of those students who said, I never thought about this. And so my lens is always, how do we bring more well-intentioned, under-equipped people in and build the will and the skill to create really strong allies who understand how to work through a racial equity lens and not another lens, the status quo lens. And so the way that looks in my daily life is entire organizations will read Waking Up White, and then they'll bring me in to do a training or a talk, and then they are like, well, what now? And so I hand them the 21-day plan. I talk, and of course, with the organizers of the engagement, they know that moment is coming and they've got a plan already ready to go. And so it's the host organization that translates my education into action. And so I don't always see that firsthand. That action can look like agreeing to remove, you know, using the 20-day, one-day plan to create the will and skill to challenge an institution to remove a mascot, or challenge an institution to change, if it's a K-12 group, to change when and how parent-teacher conferences happen. What I have learned about disrupting the status quo is it happens in many, many small moments. And I think, so that's what I have seen. I've seen people pick one piece and go after that and get a little more will and a little more skill to go after another piece in the institution and bring more people in each time.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. And I think in the interest of time, as lovely as it has been to chat with all of you, we need to move on because I think we're going to have some questions about the logistics of the challenge that we want to get to. So when you sign up for the challenge, you'll be receiving a confirmation email, which will contain general information about the challenge itself, as well as some recommended pre-work. While this is not mandatory, it will provide a solid foundation that you can build on during these 21 days. There will be a link to a glossary of terms, which will be helpful to familiarize yourself with some of the concepts that you'll see during the challenge, as well as a couple of personal reflection questions for your goals during the challenge. And like all of the challenge prompts, the pre-work will also be available on the discussion platform for you to refer back to. And if there are any other tools that you have questions about, or you think that you will need to be fully prepared for the challenge, please feel free to ask for or ask questions about that in the chat or the Q&A. But I know that we have a few questions that have come in the Q&A, and if there are any others, please feel free to add them. But for all of my kind of hosts and panelists, I will go through and we can kind of see who wants to answer each question. I think one of the biggest ones that we had a couple of questions about is if, and I'm not sure if they already got answered, but, and then we could hop back to some questions for panelists if necessary. But someone was asking for good resources regarding historical realities of agriculture in the US being founded in an economy of slavery and oppression. So Farming While Black by Leah Penniman certainly touches on that some, but it's not an exhaustive resource on that topic. So someone's curious to find something more comprehensive. Will we have resources that cover this? Maybe Curtis.
Yes, absolutely. So the pre-work will include links that go out to some shorter readings about the historical realities of what we've built in this country and globally. The resource list features those as well. Go to the Food First website. That's a great place to go to get their backgrounders that have a lot to do with racial equity, racial inequities, racism in the food system, and many, many others to come. And I just wanted to throw, because I saw a couple of the questions asked about using the challenge for younger kids, high schoolers, middle schoolers, and just want to highly recommend our friends at Embrace Race. You can check them out online. They are constantly doing webinars. There's one this evening, actually, about working with kids in the age of coronavirus. Anyway, lots of kid-friendly materials for teachers, for caregivers, and there will be a prompt on that front as well.
Great, thank you, Curtis. We also have a question asking if there is support for group formation and facilitation beyond the discussion guide. So who'd like to take that? I know that we do have some resources just beyond the guide.
Karen, do you want to take that one?
Resources beyond the guide. So there is, I think Lisa put it into the chat room on the website. There's a section there for tools for groups. So it has the guide. We also had several weeks ago a facilitated in-person intensive, but we also had another webinar similar to this one that you could go on, and we were going through tips for that as well. We're finding that in most of what we were thinking about originally was when we're going to be face-to-face, being able to do that in our coffee chats, our book clubs, and our weekly meetings with staff. But encourage you to find time that we often say at the end of the week to do some reflection and have that incorporated in your check-ins. We also have an opportunity. Is this what we're talking about now? What, Curtis?
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking because we haven't
yeah, I think that would be great.
Right.
Yeah, lift that up.
Right. We have a new platform because, as we said earlier, we're always introducing a new way and an additional way of extending this work together, and not anticipating anything other than we wanted to have. We already have an online where you just kind of type your thoughts each day, but we have an opportunity for just similar to this of being together 4 Fridays, starting with the 3rd. And the opportunity, we'll frame it. We'll be looking at the theme and the topic for that week and allowing people to reflect. We'll have guided discussion, reflect, and go into we have a breakout chat rooms that we can go into and come back. But that is another way that you and your group can be engaged in dialogue. And we also, I think there's some kind of format there that we can look in the back end and see if there are multiple people from one organization, and maybe even in that moment be able to put you in a room with your colleagues for you to just discuss. What are you reflecting on? What's come up? And then we're always looking at what next. What will you do? What kinds of strategies and processes? What do you need to learn more about? You know, just taking it from there. And we'll be sure to send you the link to all of that and the schedule so you can be able to go on and register for another opportunity for group dialogue.
Great. Thanks, Karen. So as you can see, we do have like so many ways that we can all be participating, even if we're not in person, and would really encourage you to check out all of those resources, including as Karen said, the recorded facilitator webinar and these newer platforms. So we are going to move on to our last poll, which is just a quick evaluation, more for us, but would appreciate if you could share. We have some questions about your participation in the webinar and challenge, and they'll pop up on your screen. So please share with us. We'll just do about a minute here, maybe less, because it's very short. All right. So thank you so much for participating in today's webinar. We appreciate you taking time out of your days to join us, and we're really looking forward to the challenge when it starts next week. Thank you as well to our participants and presenters for sharing about your work and perspectives. And any comments or general feedback about the webinar, please send to fsne.info@unh.edu. Just a note, we said it before, but the recording will be available on the Food Solutions New England website next week. So please share the recording with your team, colleagues that you're doing the challenge with who were unable to participate in the webinar, or others who you think would be interested in participating, and continue to spread the word. Sign up for the challenge is still open, so there is plenty of time to join us. So thank you so much. Bye.